Hello, my name is Roman. This is my project called FPS Gyro because I like gyro input, gyroscopic motion sensor control input. And let's talk about sensitivity for Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, Warzone and DMZ. Sensitivity settings, how to set them, what are the advanced settings, and how to calibrate, right? As you see, I'm actually using over here. It's Modern Warfare 3, by the way. I'm using over here iron sights to show you how my sensitivity works, and also I have a sniper rifle on me to show you how my sensitivity really work, right? As you see, I'm using motion sensor controls, and this is DualSense Edge, but doesn't really matter, it works for regular DualSense as well, right? Anyway, let's start with my sensitivity settings. If we go to the sensitivity, so you go to aiming, obviously motion sensor behavior is set to on. For me it's always on because I'm using flick stick, but this is different story. And so you go to motion sensor advanced settings, and the settings I have as 4, right? For both horizontal and vertical I have sensitivity set to 4, right? But this is not enough just to set it to 4. You will not have as smooth as I have, right? I have very smooth control and very precise, right? So what you need to do on top of the sensitivity, you need to know what is actually motion sensor staging threshold is. And another setting related to that is motion sensor staging initial scale, which is less important, but we will talk about it as well. By the way, the value of motion sensor staging threshold is from 0 to 180 because it's calculated in degrees. Let's read what it says. It says, set the controller rotation speed at which motion sensor staging stops reducing input in degrees per second. Motion sensor staging helps reduce jitters due to small motion inputs by reducing the effect resulting from controller rotation slower than the threshold. Note, setting this to 0 disables staging. This is a lot of information to process, right? And let's go to the second one. It says it is motion sensor staging initial scale. And it says set the initial value from which the motion sensor staging scale is calculated. The scale used to reduce slow rotation goes from this value with no input and progressively goes back up to 1 as the speed gets closer to the motion sensor staging threshold. Note, increasing this value weakens the motion sensor staging effect. By the way, when it's set, the value is from 0 to 1, and when it is set to 1, it completely disables a staging effect, right? But let's start with this setting. In my case, it is set to 60. It means, because it's in degrees per second, it means 60 degrees, right? 60 degrees per second. It means that my sensitivity will reach 4 if I'm moving at the speed of 60 degrees per second, like when I'm rotating my controller, right? Let's go and see how it goes in the graph. This is the graph. You see my sensitivity is set to 4 over here, right? 4, from 0 to 4. And you see my setting is 60 degrees. So it means that when my speed is 60 degrees, follow the red line, right? My speed is 60 degrees, the sensitivity is set to 4. But if it is less than that, let's say it's 30, so the sensitivity will be 2, actually. So it is kind of progressive setting. So if you as fast as 60 degrees per second, then your sensitivity will be 4, right? But after that, as you see, the line flattens and goes, no matter how fast you go, 120, 180 degrees, it will be always 4, right? And maybe to visualize it a little bit better, you can see it like that. So if my speed is, when I'm rotating the controller, right? If my speed is 60 degrees per second, and it goes from 0 to 4 sensitivity. Even if I go faster, the sensitivity will be still 4, right? Even if I go faster than, this is not like the distance, by the way. The red highlight is the actual speed. It's the distance how much you can cover in 1 second, okay? So that's how it looks. And by the way, so if you look at if you move slower than that, right, it still works fine. So if you move slower, you see, you move it on the speed of 30 degrees per second, so your sensitivity will be set to 2. right? This is pretty much very simple. And then what we're talking about here, right? What if we don't want to be limited by that speed, right? What if we don't want to be limited by that speed? In that case, you can actually do the following. You can calculate what is the sensitivity. So you obviously need to set sensitivity higher, right? Let's say, for example, if you want to set if you want this red line to go, you see the green line is following, right? So if you want to be the same effect you would like to have at, at at the speed of 60 degrees, but you don't want to limit it, so you set your sensitivity to 8, but staging threshold you set to 120. And the maximum value would be 180 and sensitivity of 12, right? By the way, sensitivity maximum is 20, but I don't want to go further than that, right, myself. Like, let's visualize that in a different way. So that really means that if you go 60 per second, then your sensitivity scale will still be, if you go 60 per second, right, your sensitivity scale will still be 0 to 4. But if you go faster than that, your sensitivity progressively will be changing from 0 to 12, right? So how you see? So that really means that actually, for example, look, if I switch to my game, right, and I just switching to my game here, and I wanted to do the same what I've just shown you, right? So I go and I set my sensitivity to 12, and it will be a bit scary, right? 12. 12 is too much, right? I don't go vertical, I just go horizontal because I don't want to waste too much time on this. Okay, so I put it to 12, and then I go and I change my motion sensor staging threshold to the value of 180. In fact, nothing will change if I'm doing slow motions, no jittering will be there and anything. Look, still the same kind of feeling, right? And I'm still kind of capable of controlling it. But if I go faster, then you see it goes real fast. Some of you may like it, right? But I don't like it, but still kind of this makes sense, right? You can do it. And by the way, let's just go and see while we are still here, right? Let's go and see. Okay, let's go even return it back to the 4 because it's my normal value I'm playing with, but I mean, it can be higher or lower, doesn't really matter. I will show you how I calibrate that in a second. But okay, let's say it's set to 4 right now. Then it will be actually too slow for me. I mean, it's a bit slow, sluggish. That's why I'm actually decreasing this value, the threshold value, to 60 when it's feel naturally, right? And again, let's just reduce it all the way to 0 and we will see why do we even need this, right? Because if we reduce it all the way to 0, you will start feeling the jittering. Okay, so no threshold here, right? As you see, when I'm just holding the controller, as you see how I'm just not moving, but it's still jittering because I have micro movements in my hands. I can increase them, like let's say I have like a lot to drink yesterday, right? I don't drink myself, by the way, but anyway. So in that case, as you see, I don't like it, so I go and increase the value. In my case, it was 60, but let's say I increased it to 20. I will show you how I calibrate that. So I go to the shooting range and I just try to move my cursor from one target to another. And you see, if I overcompensate, like I do over here, like I just try to naturally move it. And if I overcompensate, I know that it's too much, right? Either sensitivity is too high, or the staging threshold can be changed. In my case, I decided to play with staging threshold. And let's say I decided to move to the value of 80 degrees. And let's say switch to sniper. And when I try to aim, I undercompensate. So it's not enough for me. And I say, okay, 80 is too much. let's go and change it to 60, let's say 60. And I actually tell you that I was doing some experiments with various zooms and various weapons, and I arrived at this particular value of 60, right? But by the way, it also depends of FOV are you which you're using on your sensitivity as well, right? But over here, I just know, oh, I'm not undercompensate, I'm not overcompensate with both weapons. I'm just kind of going from one target to another. That it's a good value for me, but you can change, you see how the logic works, right? And by the way, because we already have this setting, which is FOV sensitivity scaling, so we don't really need to set separate settings for various zoom levels, because this setting is really good because it compensates your high zoom scope and low zoom scope, calculates current FOV and just makes them kind of similar, right? So in that case, I don't really need to have a custom sensitivity per zoom, because, like, again, as you see, it works fine for me in both cases. I know what I'm doing, and I just like, okay, this is pretty much what it is. So the last settings we are talking about, which is not really that important, but I mean, it is there and we want to know how to use it, right? This is the setting which we started to talk about. This one is this motion sensor staging initial scale. What it really means? It means that this is a sensitivity you start from. So if you set this to be 0.5, right? Let me just, it is set to 0.5. Let me just visualize it a little bit more, right? If you set it to 0.5, right? It still means that you can do speeds of 60 degrees and 30 degrees per second, and maximum staging threshold is still 60, right? You multiply your sensitivity, but it means that you start from sensitivity of 2. So what it really means that the actual scale now is less. So when you go to 60 degrees per second, then it means that your sensitivity goes from 2 to 4. And then if it's 30 maximum speed, your sensitivity goes from 2 to 3. And to visualize that, again, let's go back to the actual graph we have, right? You see my initial scale here is set to 0.5, and that means that this line starts over here. No matter how slow my movements are, my minimum sensitivity will be 2, right? And then if I go up to the speed of 60, it will be still 64 sensitivity. But please take a note, there is another interesting factor in. You see the slope of this, the acceleration speed of your sensitivity is actually less than if you go from 0. As you see, it's more kind of, it's less of a slope, right? It's less steep, so it's less aggressive actually increase of your sensitivity if you increase your speed, right? And it's especially visible over here on this line. You see, this is a red line. It's like aggressively goes far up, and over here with this initial scale, actually, for example, at the speed of 120, you will have actually the speed, the sensitivity will be 6, comparing to the sensitivity of this being 8, right? So if you draw these lines, you can easily see that. And let's just go return to the game and see how it goes actually when there is an initial set to 2. Right? Okay. So as you see, I feel, maybe you don't feel it, but I feel it, that I have less of stability, you see, because my speed sensitivity is 2, no matter what. So the same approach can be taken. If you don't like this, you can just a little bit decrease it. Let's say decrease it to 25 and see if it still kind of hurts my aim. But you have to pay attention to that. It's sort of a dead zone setting, right? Like, I recommend to have it always to 2, unless you have some problems with slow motions, like being less responsive than you want. If it's responsive, like in my case, the DualSense sensor is really precise. So I don't feel that I need a dead zone. So you may consider this thing to be a dead zone, but as you've seen already on the graph over here, right? it's more than that. There is also a speed of acceleration is different and other things. By the way, if you're talking about speed of acceleration, you may consider to just set your threshold to be 120, right? And then sensitivity to 4, then you will have the same slope, right? As if you set it to 0.5, but with less of a problem of being initial value of 2, right? As you see, and then of course, guys, it's all up to you, but yeah, so the method is shown to you. And if you want to see my gameplay, how I actually use the settings, and by the way, this is all the assumptions. I don't have any access to source code, but experimental kind of testing, empirical, empirical. What is the English word for that? Anyway, so says that I'm correct, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, especially developers. If you see me, correct me if I'm wrong, if it is actually wrong. But in my opinion, it is like correct. And by the way, take my settings, but actually calibrate to your own. I'd say using the method I shown. And if you want to see my gameplay, I actually have another channel. I play DMZ in Warzone 2, DMZ a lot, and I play always with the settings with my gyroscopic controls on PS5. My DMZ was a little bit more popular back in the day. Now this is actually channel a little bit struggling with viewers, but still there's a lot of gameplay using the gyroscopic controls. If you want to see it, check it out, please go do. You can ask questions over here or over there, doesn't really matter. But just keep in mind that the same settings are working for Warzone and Modern Warfare 3, just in different menus, but you will find them. And I'm playing as well a little bit of Warzone as well, and some Resurgence Island stuff. Yeah, and it works fine for me. And I hope you enjoyed my non-edited video as usual, and see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and yeah, bye.